Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. What does it mean to leave all the others? Is there something, somewhere, that clarifies this promise and wedding vows? I don't think so, but others seem to think otherwise. I was at work that day when Charlie Hughes returned to work. He had the flu for a few days, and I think he realized that sitting at home alone can be quite boring. His wife was working and the kids were at school, so he had no one to talk to. Anyway, Charlie was moaning about the Oprah show he'd watched the day before, where several married women were talking about how exciting it was to have a lesbian affair behind their husbands' backs. Charlie thought it was disgusting to be on national television in front of women who were easily impressed by Oprah's sophistication and wealth. He wondered very acutely about the characterless husbands of these women and how it would affect their marriages, as well as what would happen to the number of divorces if, after watching the show, more women tried it. I think I had to agree with Charlie, and when I got home that night, I probably let off a little steam in conversation with my wife, Grace. She listened to me rant about it with a funny expression on her face, and I probably should have realized that something was wrong, but it didn't work out right away. When I finished, she just turned away and shrugged her shoulders, as if dismissing my concern. Don't get so upset about it. I'm sure most women didn't think about it, and if they did, they wouldn't act. What if they had? It doesn't look like she was really cheating on her husband by doing it with another woman, she replied without looking at me. I don't think so. Our wedding vows say, leave all others, not just people of the opposite sex. In my opinion, this is the same betrayal as giving your body to another man. Would you like to see me with another man? You're probably right, but that doesn't mean you're going to share love between two people. You'd save it for the man you're married to. As a man and a faithful husband, my marriage is based on love, trust, and respect. If these three things are not present, then this is not a marriage, as far as I understand. She paused, looking out the kitchen window. I think I've started to suspect something. Her attitude and behavior told me that she was hiding something, and it was related to the topic under discussion. You can't live with someone for 23 years without studying their moods and not knowing when something is bothering them. Something was definitely bothering her. Is there something you want to talk about, Grace? I think I'd better tell you a little bit about our situation. My wife Grace and I have been married for 23 years. We had a son, Mark, who had just graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with an engineering degree and lived in Nashville, working for a consulting engineering firm. At 44, Grace was still a very attractive woman and kept fit at a local wellness center. With a height of 168 centimeters on bare feet, her slender figure weighing 61 kilograms fit into a beautiful feminine body with 34C breasts, blonde hair cut fashionably short. She was a teacher at our local high school and was actively involved in school activities, especially related to girls' education, sports, and social activities. I loved her passionately and was overwhelmed by her love for me, her intelligence and dedication to her family and work. I'm Jim, a calm guy, 185 and 83 kilograms. My appearance is probably average. The ladies didn't faint at the sight of me, but they ran over me a couple of times, so maybe I'm not completely lost. In any case, I ran to keep fit and was happy with my health and condition at the age of 45. When our son left, and the expenses related to his maintenance and education ended, we could enjoy life. We saved quite a lot of money every year because we wanted to retire in about 10 years, travel and enjoy life in adulthood. Not as active as in his youth, but not bad. I thought we were doing well. Turning from the window to look at me, I saw her face and realized that something was wrong. What's the problem? I asked, feeling a sense of dread creeping over me. Her expression expressed intense suffering, and then I realized what the problem was, and it was related to what I was ranting about when I came home from work. However, I wanted her to tell me about it. For the past few months, she and a fellow teacher, younger than herself, have been working together on a school project to develop a curriculum for a new class dedicated to girls' health. This required, she told me, that they spend an evening or two every week at another woman's apartment. Now I remember that when she returned from these evenings, she immediately went and took a shower before going to bed, but she was never interested in making love on these evenings. I didn't suspect anything at the time. Her attitude towards me has not changed. She has not become less caring or loving. Perhaps she was more caring, to say the least. With a sob, she suddenly turned away from me, hurried back to our bedroom, and closed the door. "Grace?" I shouted before she could close the door, but I didn't get an answer. I was stunned. What the hell had she done? Sprawled on a kitchen chair, I put my head in my hands, and tears began to roll down my cheeks. I couldn't believe what I was thinking, but it had to be true, otherwise she would never have reacted like that. She had an affair with another teacher. As I sat there, I thought about the 23 years we had been married and about our wonderful life. I always wanted to have a daughter, but after the birth of my son, she couldn't have more children. Good times, love. What now? I had to wait until she told me for sure. I would have given her an hour in the bedroom to recover, and then we would have talked. Wiping my eyes, I went into the room and sat down in an armchair. Closing my eyes, I prepared to wait. I knew it wasn't good, but I could feel the anger building in me as I waited. About 45 minutes later, I heard the bedroom door open and she appeared on the threshold. Settling into an armchair, I gestured to the sofa opposite me. "Sit down, Grace. I'm here to listen to what you have to say. Is this about you and Clara?" She looked like hell. Her eyes were red and watery, as if she had been crying. Her hair was tousled, and she looked defeated. I haven't seen her like this since her mother died. "Yes, and I'm so sorry, Jim. I convinced myself that it wasn't that bad. It was just making love to Clara, and I didn't know how you'd feel about it. If you thought everything was fine and I wouldn't mind, why didn't you tell me about it instead of hiding it, Grace? Was it just making love? I can't believe you. You knew it was wrong, but you did it behind my back anyway. Just like those women on Oprah's show. Well, you can just go live with your lover, Grace, because you're leaving here. Pack your things and leave. You broke our marriage vows, as far as I understand, and we are no longer married. So you can live with your lover and not hide anything. Please, Jim, please. We can get around this. We can go to a consultation. Our marriage should not break up because of a misunderstanding." "Misunderstandings?" I shouted back furiously. "Don't you understand? It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an open and outright deception, lies, and infidelity. It wasn't a misunderstanding. I'm giving you 10 minutes to pack up and get out of here. If you're not out of here by then, I'll throw your cheating out the door. Please, Jim, can't we talk about this calmly? This is my house too. If you want to argue about who stays and who leaves, go to a lawyer, but you're leaving here because I can't guarantee your safety if you stay. You have 9 minutes left." Crying, she left the room and returned to our bedroom, where I heard her take a suitcase out of the dressing room, and then the drawers of the bureau open and close. I was surprised, but in less than 10 minutes, she packed a suitcase with business clothes on hangers. Her eyes were still red and watery as she headed for the door leading to the garage. "I'll be at my sister's. Please call me when you decide I can come home," she told me as she walked by. I just looked at her and didn't say anything. A few seconds later, I heard the garage door open and her car start, then she drove away and I was left alone. I was glad she didn't go to Carla's. After she left, I just sat and thought about what to do, but I couldn't come to any conclusion. In the end, I got up and made myself a sandwich to have something in my stomach. Grace had already cooked dinner, but I didn't feel like eating too much. My stomach was in turmoil as I tried to sort out my emotions. What do I want to do? Getting a divorce? Should I go to a psychologist? Get back together? Can I trust her again? Do I want to be together again? All these thoughts were running through my head in a mess, and I couldn't put them in a logical order. I was sitting in front of the TV in the living room, but I wasn't watching it when the phone rang. Stretching, I picked up the phone and heard, "Betty, Grace's younger sister." "What's going on, Jim?" "Grace arrived with her luggage, and something is wrong with her. She can't or won't tell me what happened. Because of her, me, Jake, her husband, and the kids are offended by you. I think you kicked her out." "It's true, Betty. I found out that she was having an affair." "Damn it. You must be joking." "Grace? I can't believe it. Who is it? Do you know?" "This is the teacher she worked with on the school project, Carla." "Another woman? I didn't know she was a lesbian. When did this happen?" "In the last month or so, I think." "Well, it was just another woman. Aren't you going to get a consultation and take her back? You women. I take it as seriously as if she was doing it with another guy." This not only means that she does not respect me and our marriage vows, but also that I cannot meet her needs, that she should go somewhere else to satisfy her needs. It's a real slap in the face, as far as I understand, but I haven't decided what to do yet. I just know that I want her to leave here until I decide what to do next. All right, Jim. We'll leave her here for a few days, but if you don't pick her up by then, she'll have to find another place to live. The children will live together until she leaves. Have you already told Mark, our son, what's going on? No, and I'm not going to until I decide what to do. He doesn't need to know yet. All right, Jim. I'm really shocked by this. I'll go and talk to her now that I know what happened. All right, Betty. Keep me posted, and I'll let you know what I'm going to do as soon as I can. That night, I had a restless sleep. Since our marriage, we have slept in the same bed every night, except for 2 or 3 times when I had to leave for the night on business, or when she went to her mother. I missed having her by my side. Finally, I dozed off, trying to gather my thoughts about what I needed to do. When I woke up in the morning, I realized that it was Saturday, and I remembered why Grace was not at home. It upset me immensely when I remembered, and then I thought that today is Saturday and I will not be able to contact any divorce lawyer for several days. Sitting over a cup of coffee after breakfast, I realized that my rage had subsided and I could finally start moving forward in solving the problem. I think first of all I needed to know why she did what she did, and maybe she's not the one who can explain it to me. I thought we had a good marriage and that we found satisfaction from each other in bed. Why did she do that? She thought I wouldn't mind. Did she really think that? Or was it the only thing she could come up with to justify her betrayal? Did she have other affairs that I didn't know about? If I forgive her, will I be able to trust her again? Was it worth saving our marriage? We have been married for 23 years, and I was looking forward to growing old together. Damn, I was too old to try to start a new relationship, but I wasn't going to become a cuckold. That's for sure. Finally, I decided what I had to do before I came to a final decision and reached for the phone. Betty, this is Jim. You can get Grace on the intercom. I've come to a decision and I want you both to hear it. Shouldn't you be talking to your wife, Jim? I don't think I should get involved. We talked, and I know that she deeply regrets what she did. I know she wants to tell you how sorry she is, but she's afraid to come home to tell you that she's willing to do anything to get through this. I'm glad she's so remorseful, I replied sarcastically, but she might not like what I want her to do before I see her again. I want you to be present during the conversation and make sure that she understands what she has to do. So please get her on the phone. All right, Jim. Just a minute. Jim? Hi, Grace. Are you on the line with Betty? Yes, I'm here. Okay, Grace, here's what I need before we can talk about reconciliation. I want you to undergo a full psychiatric evaluation to determine why you did what you did. I need to know why, and I can't accept any of your excuses. Before I can trust you again, I need to get guarantees that this will never happen again. Can you hear me, Grace? Yes, I hear you, Jim. I will do it, but it may take some time. Can I come home? I'd rather not see you again until I see that there's a chance for reconciliation. Find yourself a furnished apartment. I'll leave tomorrow afternoon, and you can come and get your stuff. After that, I'll change the locks. All right, Jim, she sobbed. Betty, I want you to report to me on her progress with the psychiatrist. I would like to complete this in due course. All right, Jim, but you have to understand that she's my sister, and I'm not going to inform on her. All I want to know is if she's seeing a psychiatrist. If not, I will contact a divorce lawyer. All right, Jim. This is all? No, I want you to quit your job and cut off all contact with Clara. Oh, Jim, I'm not going to see or talk to Clara anymore. I will ask another teacher to work with me on our program, and we will do the work during my working period at school. Please don't ask me to give it up. I will do what you demand, but I beg you not to force me to do it. Okay, Grace, I'll back off, but I'll feel better if you transfer to another school next school year. I'll do that, Jim. Thank you. You really messed up, Grace. I know, and I'm really sorry. Did you tell Mark? Not yet, but I think he should know that we don't live together. I'll tell him that we decided to take a little break from each other. He'll know there's more to it, but I won't tell him. You can if you want. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. We said goodbye, and I went to mow the grass. While I was doing this, I was thinking about my marital problems and how to keep an eye on Grace. When he finished mowing the grass, He went into the house, sat down at the computer, and began to look for GPS tracking equipment. I found what I wanted and made an order with express delivery. With it, I could follow Grace wherever she went in her car, as long as she was within a 5-mile radius of home or my laptop. Now I had to plan how to install the transmitter in Grace's car. It was expensive, but necessary to keep an eye on her, as I couldn't count on her sister to keep me informed. In the evening, the phone rang, and I realized from the caller ID that it was Carla. My rage returned when I picked up the phone. "Yes?" I said. "Jim, this is Carla. Is Grace at home? She didn't come to school today, and I wondered if she was sick. We have a meeting today." "Grace doesn't live here right now, Carla," I told her through gritted teeth. "This cheater is looking for a new home. I'm surprised she didn't contact you, her lover, to find a place to live. Please don't call here anymore, and in the future, stay away from me." Oh my God. Then she hung up and I was left with the dial tone. I was even glad she called, because that meant Grace hadn't tried to contact her. However, I thought that if Grace suddenly decides to end our marriage and go live with her mistress, I should protect my financial assets. It will be a simple matter to get everything back if our marriage continues. So, on Monday morning, I went to the bank and transferred half of our joint accounts to new accounts with my name on them. I did the same with our non-IRA investments. Back at work, I called our insurance agent and asked to remove Grace from my list of beneficiaries, replacing her name with the name of our son Mark. Calling our family lawyer, I asked him to prepare a new will, in which only Mark would be the recipient of my estate. I also asked him the name of a good divorce lawyer, and he expressed regret and referred me to Donna Sinclair as the best in the area. After the conversation ended, I called Ms. Sinclair's office and made an appointment for the next day. Although I didn't know if I would eventually get divorced, I thought it would be nice to sit down and talk to her and figure out my options. Immersed in my work, I was able to forget about my marital problems. But when I returned home to an empty house in the evening, it depressed me. The call from Betty cheered me up a bit. She said Grace had made an appointment with a psychiatrist and would be coming for her first visit on Thursday. She also said that Grace had not gone to work that day, but would probably return tomorrow, and that she was gradually recovering from crying all the time. Well, it's nice to know that she's suffering. On Wednesday, the GPS tracking equipment arrived, and after reading the instructions, I started setting it up and installing the necessary programs on my laptop. The system will automatically notify me by cell phone if the set boundaries are crossed. When everything was ready, I installed a tracking transmitter on my car and drove it. It was working fine. Then I had to install a transmitter on Grace's car. The tracking transmitter was very small and had the ability to be magnetically attached. That evening, I visited Betty and found Grace's car parked in their driveway. It was a simple matter to get under the back, attach the transmitter to a steel rod behind the bumper and drive away. With fresh batteries, it could work for up to a month. That would be enough time for me to figure out everything I need to know. Namely, will Grace still be dating Carla? Now, all my days were filled with waiting for my mobile phone to tell me that Grace had traveled beyond the boundaries that I had set in the computer program. I specifically set the boundaries in the program so that Clara's apartment is outside of it, and most other innocent places are inside the boundaries. I assumed that Clara would not go to Betty's house, but if they met, it would happen at Clara's apartment. What I couldn't control was if they met somewhere else, but it didn't seem to make sense to me. But what could make sense when dealing with a cheater? Betty kept me informed about Grace's psychiatric appointments, but apart from the tracker, all I knew was that she went to work at her school every day, where she probably met Clara. However, according to the tracker, she did not visit Clara in the evenings. We'll have to see what happens when she moves into her own house. About a week and a half after she left home, Betty informed me that Grace was moving into a furnished apartment and would no longer be able to keep me informed of Grace's meetings with a psychiatrist. Now I was dependent on a tracker to keep me up to date. When Grace moved into the apartment, I changed the boundaries of the program to include a new place of residence, a school, Betty's office, and a psychiatrist. I continued to watch her. The only thing the tracking device didn't tell me about was if Clara came to her apartment. However, I didn't think Grace would allow this, because I knew what Clara's car looked like and could see it at her apartment. I did visit her in the evenings, but I never saw Clara's car there. Finally, one evening Grace called me. "Jim, I just wanted you to know that I've had 3 sessions with a psychiatrist, and she'd like you to come to the next session on Thursday afternoon so she can explain some things to you. Will you be able to come? I'll be there, Grace. What time and where? I knew where she was with the help of a tracker, but I wanted to ask her so that she wouldn't have any suspicions that I was following her. At 1600 hours in room 204 at Medical Plaza West on Grave Street. Thank you so much for supporting me, honey. I want everything to be resolved as soon as possible. I heard her sob, and then she said, "You have no idea how much I've missed you." Okay, Grace, I'll see you on Thursday. I went to the psychiatrist's office early on Thursday afternoon, and I had to sit with Grace in the waiting room for a few minutes. I was hoping that when we got out of there, we could go home together. When we finally entered the psychiatrist's office, she asked us to sit in a niche in the corner of the office, where there was a couch with an upholstered chair opposite her. She waved at us and sat down in an armchair. The psychiatrist was a pleasant-looking woman, about our age, with a beautiful body. It looks like she was exercising to keep fit. Jim, I'm glad to finally meet you. As you know, Grace and I have already had 3 sessions, and I think we need to talk about her visits here. First of all, could you tell me what you expect to get out of this? Grace told me what you told her, but I'd like to hear it from you. You know that Grace had an affair with another woman, and I cannot and do not want to make a distinction in relation to an affair with a man. I'm not sure if she sees it the same way I do, but I look at it as a serious violation of our prenuptial agreement. I want to know if her actions were caused by a mental disorder or what could have caused her to break her wedding vow, and if so, is there a way to cure this so that she will never be tempted to do it again? I can forgive her wrongdoing and continue our marriage if I feel I can trust her again. I understand your concern about your marriage and how important trust is to you. However, you should know that psychiatry deals with mental illness, and I have determined that Grace does not suffer from a mental illness that requires psychiatric help or treatment. She has a normal mental reaction and some minor problems, but no illness. I would recommend a psychologist or marriage counselor as the best way to solve your marital problems. Okay, she doesn't have a mental illness, but why did she suddenly start a relationship with someone else? Or am I wrong? I asked, turning to face Grace. Was it your first time with someone else? Oh, Jim, there's never been anyone but you, and I'm very sorry about my affair with Clara. I should have believed her. Grace was not one to hide her feelings easily, especially in a stressful situation. I will try to answer your question, Jim, without unnecessary psychobabble, the psychiatrist continued. From a psychological point of view, Grace could feel that she was missing something in her life. When a woman turns 40, it is very difficult for her to accept that her appearance may fade, and she becomes very susceptible to suggestion and seduction. In addition, today in our society, various lifestyles are increasingly being accepted, which, as a rule, call into question the previous taboos associated with life. She simply downplayed in her mind the importance of morals regarding her relationship with a person of her own sex and how it relates to your marriage. I know that you take your wedding vows very seriously, and Grace has forgotten about this fact, and she has to pay for it. Hopefully not at the cost of losing your marriage. You know she will never make that mistake again. Right now, she is fully focused on doing everything possible to succeed. I would say that now you can trust her unconditionally. I would again recommend that you both contact a marriage counselor and get your marriage back on track. You've been married for 23 years now, and I know that both of you have invested too much in each other and in your marriage to give it all up now. Does this solve your problems? I think I can accept your assessment of the situation, but as I understand it, you consider my strict observance of our wedding vows to be unique. Is there a reason for this? When we say the words, leaving all others, what is unique about it? She looked stunned for a moment and was momentarily speechless. I'm sorry that you got that impression. Fidelity in marriage is very important, and I didn't mean to imply anything when I mentioned your strict interpretation of these words, she apologized. Can you give a different interpretation? No, I probably can't. Are you married? Yes, I am married and, as it seems to me, very happily. I noticed that you don't wear wedding rings. I wear them when I'm not doing professional work with a patient. I don't want them to distract attention. I noticed that she blushed slightly and was nervous during our conversation and behaved like a person who has something to hide. I didn't elaborate on this topic, but it showed me that some people can take their wedding vows too lightly. Thank you, doctor. I think we'll go, since I need to go and help Grace pack up and get home, I said, turning to Grace and hugging her. Tears streamed down her face as we said goodbye. Grace returned home that evening, and after dinner we returned home, where I helped her unpack some things so we could go to bed. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to get aroused, but the sight of her body was all I needed to restore our marital intimacy. The next morning, we had breakfast together before going about our business, and smiled and laughed together like newlyweds. Still a little shy, but as if enjoying a newfound relationship. As I packed up my laptop to take it to the car, I thought about the tracker still installed on Grace's car and decided that I would leave it there for a while, despite the professional opinion of a psychiatrist. However, I will have to restore the boundaries and replace the batteries in the beacon. I was sure that I could trust Grace now, but we still had to consult to finally solve the problem of trust, and until then, it would not hurt to observe the situation. We started going to a marriage counselor, and after 2 months of meetings, we felt more comfortable together. My tracking system did not detect any unusual or suspicious actions on her part, and I began to relax. She started seeing a psychiatrist again on Wednesday evenings because Grace felt that she needed psychotherapy, and she was comfortable with a psychiatrist who agreed to do psychotherapy with her, although it was not in her line. I changed the boundaries of my notification to take into account the need for trips to the psychiatrist's office. Grace told me that she has applied to transfer to another school in the district for next year and is confident that she will receive it, despite the fact that she will have to travel further every day. I felt it would be worth it to keep her away from Clara. One evening, after Grace had gone to see a psychiatrist, I was sitting at my desk with my laptop on and the surveillance program running. I've always admired the technology that allowed me to keep an eye on her car. Now Grace went to the psychiatrist's evening appointments on Wednesdays so as not to leave work early. I noticed that she arrived at the office for an appointment, and after a while her car pulled out of the parking lot, drove 2 blocks up the street, and parked again. I tried to remember what was on that street, like a restaurant or something else that could explain this move, but all I could remember was that there was a motel at or near that address. It was within the boundaries set by my mobile phone, so if she had gone there earlier, I would not have been warned. I checked the phone book and confirmed that the Best Western Motel is located at this address. I was stunned. What the hell is she doing there? Realizing that I needed more information, I got out, got in the car, and went to the motel. When I got there, I made sure that her car was actually parked at the motel. Tears welled up in my eyes as I sat and waited for her to come back. An hour and a half later, I saw her and the psychiatrist leave the room on the ground floor next to her car and drive away. During the time that I waited, my rage grew, and my thoughts were focused on revenge. If I were to face them now, I would have to give up any thought of decent retribution. As soon as they left, I went to the motel office and found the night clerk. He looked like he was willing to accept a small additional reward when I approached him. I took a $50 bill out of my wallet and held it out so he couldn't see it. The group that just left room 125. Can you tell me who's registered there for tonight? He looked at the $50 before answering. I really shouldn't tell you this. I'm sure you shouldn't, but can you tell me anyway? I asked, pushing $50 across the counter to him. Taking the bill and putting it in his pocket, he worked on the computer keyboard and announced the name of the psychiatrist and the information that she had paid in cash. Looking back at the monitor, he reported that she had rented a room every 2 weeks for the past 6 weeks. Then I told him my wife's name and asked if she had stayed there too. After a brief consultation with the computer, he informed her that she had paid for alternative environments and used our credit card. Perhaps it was a mistake on her part, which, as it seemed to me, could be in my favor. She usually kept an eye on our finances, so maybe she thought she could slip by. I shoved another $50 at him and asked for a copy of the 6-week registrations and both sides. It only took him a few minutes to print out the information and give it to me. I expect them to be back next week, I told him. Will you be on duty then? Yes, I work a regular shift. I would like to meet with you at the end of the week to work with you on something that would be beneficial to both of us. A plan was forming in my brain, and I needed a couple of days to work out the details. I'll be here after 6, from Monday to Friday, he told me. Okay, I'll probably be back on Friday, I told the clerk, hurriedly leaving to get home before Grace. I didn't want her to suspect that I might be following her. The next day, I called divorce attorney Donna Sinclair, told her what I had unexpectedly discovered, and asked her a few questions about privacy laws. Then I called a private investigator specializing in electronic surveillance and made an appointment with him for the afternoon. On Friday evening, I was back at the Best Western Motel and talked to the friendly receptionist. My excuse to Grace was that I needed to buy some milk at the store. When I got to the motel, I told the desk clerk that I wanted to rent a room on the ground floor for a week, away from the office. When my wife comes on Wednesday to pay and check in, I wanted the clerk to give her the key to the room I rented. After she left, he had to give me the original registration documents and credit card. He indicated that he had no problem with this, since she was my wife and used my room. I gave him $100 and left. On Tuesday morning, I took a lunch break from work and met with a surveillance expert at the motel. We went into the room I had rented and showed him what I was up to. He said he had done this kind of surveillance before and practically knew what was needed. He will hide 2 digital mini cameras in the room. The main subject of the shooting will be the bed. One camera is for close-up and the other is for observing the room. He would hide the transmitter in the closet behind a few extra blankets. The system will be controlled by a remote control, which he will be able to control from his car outside, where the recording device will be located. I left him to mind his own business and went back to work. Meanwhile, at home I tried to behave normally, but it was difficult when I thought about her cheating and how the psychiatrist had misled me. I was going to make my revenge as destructive as possible for both of them. I was embarrassed that Grace was so good at hiding her infidelity from me. She acted as if there was nothing in her life but home and work. In fact, I thought, she behaved exactly the same way when she went with Clara. I never knew about it until she was stressed out. After Grace went to see a psychiatrist on Wednesday evening, I watched on the tracking program as she repeated what had happened a week earlier. She picked up her lover and went to the Best Western Hotel. Now all I had to do was sit and wait. I pretended to be asleep when she got home, so we didn't talk while she undressed and quietly slipped into bed. I think she didn't want to talk either. The next morning, I got up and left home early, stopping for breakfast at IHOP before going to work. I've done this before, so I didn't think it would alert Grace. Shortly after 10 a.m., my surveillance guy called me and said he had what I wanted on DVD and asked if I wanted to stop by his office first to watch it. Saying that I wanted to, I took time off from work, explaining to the boss that I had personal matters, and went to his office. The camera showed exactly what I was hoping for, and with great clarity. Normally, watching 2 women making love would have turned me on, but this time knowing who the participants were made me very angry. When the surveillance expert handed me his large bill, I wrote out a check for the entire amount with gusto. Then I took the DVD to the divorce lawyer, and we watched it together in her office. She nodded her head when it was over and said she thought it was a great job and completely sufficient for what she was going to do. I also gave her copies of the motel booking details. I asked how long it would take for Grace to receive the divorce papers accusing her of adultery and if they could be served at her school. She said that for 2 days, and for an additional fee, they can be handed over right in the classroom. I told her to do that. Then I asked about the psychiatrist. The lawyer told me that she could be sued for alienation of affection, but the most important thing was to get her medical license revoked for ethical reasons. She'll have to press charges against the psychiatrist at the state licensing board. We could also inform the psychiatrist's husband about his wife's infidelity and see what he wants to do. I asked if I could handle notifying my husband. The lawyer offered to give me a copy of the DVD and registration data. If they had an open marriage or the husband did not think that making love to another woman was so important, the matter could have ended there. My lawyer made copies of the DVD and registration data before I left her office, and I set about the task of finding out who the psychiatrist's husband was while I was waiting for the documents to be handed over. It didn't take long, but as I expected, they weren't in the phone book, so I had to look elsewhere. A friend who was a doctor made inquiries about him at the local medical society, and I quickly got a name, address, and phone numbers for work and home. He was an architect with an office in the city center. In order not to spoil the surprise that I was going to give to his wife and myself, I decided to wait until he was contacted after handing over the documents. Finally, the day came, and my lawyer called me at work the day before to tell me that it would happen the next morning. I quickly arranged for a friend to come to my house with a truck the next morning after Grace left for work to help me move. I have already rented a furnished apartment near my work. This time, I was going to leave Grace a house to live in. I didn't want to live with things that reminded me of the 23 years of my life that I was going to write off as a loss, except for our son. I wanted to leave the house with the few things I needed before 10 o'clock because I figured she wouldn't be able to stay at school after she was served and would come home quickly. We loaded the truck by 9:45 and left. Before I left my wedding ring on the kitchen table. When we got to the furnished apartment I rented, my friend helped me move my meager belongings inside, then wished me luck and left. While I was putting things away, my mobile phone rang. After checking the caller ID, I saw that it was Grace and I answered. "Jim, why did you do that? Why did you make me serve in my class? I'm the laughing stock at school now, and I'm probably going to lose my job," she sobbed. "If you wanted a divorce, Grace, why didn't you tell me? You should have known that there was no way I was going to let you make me a cuckold again. Everything would be much easier if you told me that you wanted to get a divorce to pursue your other interests, and we could part amicably. You left me no choice but to make it as ugly as possible for you and your lover." "My mistress? What did you do?" she sobbed. "After she responds to my lawsuit against her for alienation of affection, she will fight to keep her license in the state and will probably end up divorced." "Oh my God. Oh my God. Grace, I don't want you to call me again. If you have something to tell me, do it through the lawyers. I'm going to call our son tonight and let him know what's going on with us, and I'm not going to stall for time. You ruined our marriage and our lives. I was hoping that one day you and I would retire, but now everything is lost. Maybe Afra will pay you to tell your story on her show." I needed to insert this, Barb. "Before we hang up," I continued, "can you tell me why you got back together with another woman? This shouldn't have happened. She called me one day after our meeting at her office and asked if I would like to meet her in the evenings at her office for consultations. She thought I might have a fixation on lesbianism. When we met, she offered to act out some of the things I was doing with Clara, and the next thing I knew, I was hooked again. I am so sorry." As I hung up the phone, I heard uncontrollable crying in the receiver. The epilogue. The divorce took place, and he was so famous that Grace moved to Nashville, to our son. He really didn't want her around, but she was his mother, and he couldn't divorce her like I did. He told me that she got together with another woman there, and I think that's what she wanted all this time. The psychiatrist lost her license to practice in this state, and her husband divorced her. The attachment alienation suit earned me $100,000, and I bought a cabin on a lake a few hours away so I could pursue my fishing hobby. I found another woman who hates Afra as much as I do, and we get along great together. We're getting married next week, and I hope that someday she and I will be happy in retirement. We will spend our honeymoon in the hut, as she also loves fishing. End.